Welcome to the Political Power Hour with your host, former congressional candidate, retired federal agent, and three-time author, Michael Vilardi, highlighting today's political hot topics with the most interesting political candidates in the 2022 election. The most hard-hitting political commentary on the air today. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Political Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Vilardi, and I have a really special guest with me today, Dan Franzese, who is running to be your congressman if you're in Palm Beach. Dan, welcome to the show.
Great to see you, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure to have Dan. I've been supporting Dan for 4 years. He was my pick after I decided not to run again in 2020. So, Dan, I think you're the guy that has what it takes to win this race, and I'm glad you're here.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. So let's start off. Tell us why you're running for Congress.
Mike, I'm running because I want to help President Trump finish the job of making America great again. That's what this is all about.
So tell us about your support for President Trump.
Well, it's very clear that I'm a Trump supporter, right?
Right.
And I say it's because of the incredible results he's gotten. Under President Trump, in just the last year and a quarter, people's incomes are up, inflation is down, interest rates are down, crime is down, we have secure borders, and the world respects us again. Those are the great results he's had. And remember in 1980 when President Reagan first ran?
Yes.
He asked everyone, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And the answer was no. People were much worse off.
Right.
Now I can say to people, are you better off than you were a year and a quarter ago? And the answer is a resounding yes. He's done so much for us. Yes. I mean, we could talk for hours about it, but in many ways, it's more than just economics, but it's all these other things as well.
Well, I'm going to pick two things just to make it clear so people understand, because sometimes they always don't.
Okay.
The big, beautiful bill.
Yes, sir.
Okay. People don't know that Donald Trump saved 40 million people from being audited. Now, how did that happen? Because the big, beautiful bill changed something in the Inflation Reduction Act that Joe Biden had passed. In that bill, 80,000 new IRS agents were going to be hired. And the reason they were being hired was because they changed the 1099 requirement on a Zelle or a Venmo from $20,000 to $600,000. That was going to trigger 40 million audits, and all these people that were selling their sons, their daughters, would have to prove to the IRS it wasn't income to them. Okay, so I don't know if you. So that's one way where Donald Trump has really helped the American people. Not to mention the $6,000 extra for Social Security, the no tax on tips, right? And of course, we do have
no tax on overtime.
No tax on overtime, exactly. I mean, those are all tremendous things. Now, tell us. Now, you're running against Lois Frankel, who you've won this. You won the primary twice before. What makes you qualified to be our next congressman?
Sure. But on that last point,
yes,
all the things you're talking about were all part of the big, beautiful bill, and
yes,
these are all things Lois Frankel voted against. And
right.
we can come back to
right.
that. So, Mike, what makes me qualified? I have a very long track record of success as a leader in two different areas, both in the community and in the business world.
Okay.
So in the community, I've been always very active in one thing or another. I was extremely active in youth sports, and one example there is I coached 8 seasons of Little League Baseball, and
wow,
I'm proud to say I never had a losing season. And that didn't come by accident. I completely immersed myself in that, studied it, made up the rosters,
wow,
ran statistics and all that. I did a lot of other things as well. I was a stadium play-by-play announcer for the football team. And I was the voice of football for 5 years.
Well, wait a minute. Have you thought about helping the Yankees?
I'm not that good. I could coach the 10-year-old boys, but those guys, I'm not sure I could help them. But I was also extremely involved in my community church. I was on the church council for many years, and then at one point they asked me to become the treasurer and chief financial officer.
Yes.
And again, I fully embraced that role and completed a big turnaround in the church's finances and brought them back to a balanced budget. And I served as landlord for the commercial properties that they owned, brought them back to profitability.
Right.
But perhaps my biggest contribution to the church is I was part of a group of church leaders that led the church out of a national church organization that had gone totally woke. Now that sounds straightforward, but that was a multi-year legal battle, but we won. So I could proudly say my fellow church leaders and I stood up to woke and we won. But that's just in the community. In the business world, I mostly worked for big companies, but I did have a brief stint as an entrepreneur, and that was a grand slam home run. We created a business that we successfully sold to a major media company. In the business world, I was always the go-to guy to start things up.
Right.
I started up 6 successful business units across my career, and every single one of them is still running. And my last boss summed it up very well. He said, if anyone ever calls him up to check me out, he's going to say, if you want to get something done, put Dan Franzese in charge of it. So I'm the leader who gets results, and my last boss tells it all. I'm the guy to put in charge of getting things done.
So basically, you told us 3 things. Number 1, you know how to turn around a deficit and make it into a profit. You know budgets, you know finances.
That's right.
And that's certainly something we can use in Congress today, because we keep running deficits and we need somebody that can make those into surpluses, and you'd be that guy.
That's right. I've actually done it. I've balanced budgets. How many people in Congress have actually balanced a budget or met a payroll or turned around a business?
Right,
I've
that's
done
true.
all these things, and people keep telling me they want businessmen running our government in Washington, and that's a key thing I bring. In fact, if people ask me, what's the one thing you want me to remember? And
Right.
the answer is, I will bring a businessman's perspective to Washington.
Right. So you've made yourself wealthy because of your ability to make money, right? To run businesses.
right.
You made them profitable. And that's something else we need in Washington. We need to get that done.
That's right.
And you are a guy that gets things done. That's the third thing, is Dan will get the job done. Is that correct?
That's my track record, and that's what it says, and that's what my
Right.
former boss says. If you want to get something done, put Dan in charge of it.
Right, and hey, you've done a great job in your last 2 campaigns, winning the primaries. The only issue that you really have is you're sitting in a D9 district. Hopefully that's going to change, but which makes it so difficult because of the fact that you're just out-registered almost 2-1. And yet a couple of years ago, more people went into the voting booth and actually voted for you. Where you lost was the mail-in ballots.
That's right.
I mean, but the actual election, if we just count people that actually walked in and voted, they voted for you over her.
Every time. It's
Right.
always mail-in ballots where I got beat. And
Right, exactly.
I have my great suspicions about mail-in ballots.
Of course.
I think we
of
all
course.
do in the party.
Right, because you don't need, things happen, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like in Pennsylvania where the Civil War veterans were mailing them in. And, yeah, we understand.
That's
we
right.
understand. All right, so tell me about your AAA platform that you're running on.
So sure, it's affordability, accountability,
Okay.
and America First. Now,
Okay.
Let me talk about what I mean about each of those things.
Okay.
On affordability, the policies of the last administration were killing us. We had inflation of over 20%, and I would argue that it was probably more like 30% for working class people because of the high costs of energy and food.
Right.
And we need to do something about that. And I'm going to draw on my more than 40 years of experience of living and breathing finance and economics. And when I talk about these topics, I'm not reading a script from a consultant.
Right.
I'm drawing on stuff I've been living and breathing since I was a college freshman in 1980. And there's really 2 ways to attack this: grow people's incomes and reduce expenses. So on the income side, I'm in favor of pro-business, pro-economic policies that will grow incomes, like bringing back jobs and just stimulating job growth and economic growth in the country. So that's one side of approaching it. The other side is to find ways to bring expenses down and put more money back in people's pockets. And there are lots of ways of doing that both accomplish that, but also help that first goal of growing the economy and helping us out. I'm talking about things like cutting taxes, advocating for lower interest rates, cutting regulations. That's a big one.
Absolutely.
Interestingly, Fortune 500 CEOs say lower taxes are great, cutting regulations are even better.
Right.
Because that's even more expensive for them. And for them, it's a hassle and an expense, but for small businesses that don't have the resources they have, it's a job killer. So we absolutely want to cut the regulations. And I'm also in favor of pushing for energy policies that allow for more production of oil and gas to bring prices back down. We've achieved the goal under President Trump of getting back to energy independence, and that's fantastic.
Right.
But one thing that we can achieve is taking it a step further to energy dominance. We frankly should be pumping at least 2 million more barrels of oil per day than we are now. And if we continue with these pro-energy policies, we will get there. We will get cheaper energy, and we will, again, allow ourselves to be the energy dominant country in the world. But these things all factor back to the individual. So these are all ideas on how I'm approaching affordability, because right now people tell me they're having trouble making ends meet, and I want to help that. Now the second one is accountability. What we don't have now are leaders who are just failing us again and again, yet no one holds them accountable. And I'm talking about people like our teachers in our schools,
Right.
our courts and our prosecutors, and people in government. Failure seems to be rewarded with more jobs and more budgets. I mean, one of the greatest failures in American politics right now is the current governor of California,
Yes.
Gavin Newsom. He's failing on an epic global scale. Yet,
Well, you're
can
right.
can you even name a single thing he's done right or improved?
Well,
No, but
right.
yet he's their darling.
Right.
He's their best property to be the next governor, but the next president. Excuse me.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Under Governor Newsom, two refineries shut down because of regulation. You mentioned regulation.
That's right.
As a result, they're going to have to import all their gas because their gas is a special blend. Okay, they don't have regular gas like we do. It's a special blend, which is more expensive. Now it's going to be imported for Europe. It's possible that if this war continues, and I don't think it will that much longer, and today oil prices declined by over $6 a barrel, which was good, because we do got to get that gas back down to that 250 level that it was at before all these things started. They're going to see $10 gasoline. In addition to that, they passed a legislative law that says that if a bag of Cheetos isn't made out of 80% recyclable materials, there's a $2,000 fine. Well, that forced Frito-Lay to close down their factory because they can't afford that. Okay? So the other thing that's happening is PepsiCo, Coca-Cola are retooling their factories because the minimum wage in California is going to go to $20, and they can't afford to pay that, so they're going to robots. So Governor Newsom, who wasn't smart enough to have water in the fire hydrants when the fires were coming, his regulations on gasoline caused two major companies to shut down their refineries there, which is going to cause a shortage and an epic increase in price. And then you have big companies like Coke, Pepsi, Frito-Lay's closing down and retooling because. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That was supposed to be off.
Happens to all of us.
Okay, as a result of it. So you're absolutely right. What are people looking at and thinking when they see him? I mean, he's a good-looking guy, but he's done absolutely zero.
So there should be accountability for people who fail like that. So those are my first two things: affordability, helping
Yes.
people's incomes, getting prices down; accountability,
Right.
getting results from our people. People expect results, and they don't want to be rewarded for failure. They want rewards for success. And the final thing, my final A, is America First.
Oh, right.
And that one is we can get through very briefly. All of our policies should be geared toward doing what's best for this country.
Okay.
Period. Now, that's a very simple standard, but it's an important one, and one that people often forget. People always have reasons to do things that are not necessarily in the best interest of our country, whether it's to help some other country or to pursue some personal agenda. That's not what it should be about. Everything should always be about doing what's best for this country.
Right.
So, America First, accountability, affordability. That's what's at the heart of my AAA plan.
And that's excellent. Now let me ask you a question about moral compasses. Today a woman came out against Eric Swalwell. I don't know if you've heard about this. It happened just before we.
A lot of people have come out against him.
He basically drugged her and choked her. And that's a problem in Congress, the moral compass. Tell us about your moral compass.
So the interesting thing, but that's another example of accountability. People have known about him being a problem for a long time. 55 of his former staffers signed a letter saying he was a sexual predator. Well, that didn't just happen overnight. Obviously, they've known about it for years. But yet, when did they do something about it? Not because they had a problem with that. It's when they needed to get him out of the governor's race. So that's a disgrace that it took this long. That when the people are doing bad stuff, it needs to be nipped in the bud immediately.
Right.
As for myself, I had the privilege of growing up in a two-parent, very religious family, where we went to church every week. We read the Bible. My mother was my Sunday school teacher. In fact, I'm named after Daniel from the Bible.
Okay. It's a good guy to be named
so we
after.
took it very seriously. We also went to Bible study. I am a very religious man. I'm not as overt about it the way other people are, but trust me, it's there.
You love God.
And every day I want to live my life like a good Christian man. And the 10 Commandments, for example, for some people in politics, those are guidelines or suggestions, but for me, it's the law. And so that's the way I've always lived my life. That's how I was as a businessman. I could tell you, I was happy the day I discovered that honest business, which I would always conduct, honest business is good business.
Right.
And that's the advice I always give to young people starting their business careers.
So basically, you're telling our audience, and you're telling the people you have integrity, right? Above all else.
Yes, absolutely.
And God comes before
Absolutely.
your own
100%, Mike.
Okay.
100%.
Well, and that's terrific. Tell us about you got an MBA at Wharton, so you can't be too much. You're a smart guy, obviously. I mean, you went to Amherst College. You got an MBA at Wharton. I mean, you got to have some sort of credentials to get that done.
Well, I was always blessed with being a good student.
Okay.
And that's how I got into those schools.
Right.
People often say those are a couple of fancy Ivy League schools.
Right.
I say yes, they were.
Right.
I had the privilege of going there. And back in those days, people like me had a fighting chance to get into them and also to be able to pay for them. They've gotten so expensive now.
Right, that's true.
But I didn't start out that way. I didn't start out going to fancy schools.
Right.
I went to Bethpage High School,
Okay.
which was a very good school in a very blue-collar town. And another important thing about me is my parents. They were both children during the Depression, Great Depression, because
Right.
they had to leave school early to help support their families.
Wow.
So my father had an 8th grade education, my mother 10th grade education. She was primarily a homemaker, and my father was a union carpenter for many, many years. And so from them I learned a tremendous work ethic, and also from my father I learned basic carpentry skills. And that's why when I was 16 I was able to start taking part-time work as a carpenter. And I did that all through college and grad school, and that's how I helped put myself through school. So I've truly worked my way up and lived the American dream, and I've taken advantage of the opportunities that were available to me. But I could say for young people now, those same opportunities aren't there. School's gotten so priced out.
Yeah,
You have other programs that make it hard for people like me to get into these schools. I want to get back to having that same system of opportunity that I benefited from.
So, I mean, you really are a follower of Jesus. You even followed in his profession.
I guess so. I guess so. That's one way to look at it. But look, I did everything. And I started working before I was 16. For as long as I can remember, I was shoveling people's driveways in the winter, mowing lawns, washing
That's what you
cars.
gotta do.
You name it. Delivering flowers. I even did that for a while when I was in college. Any kind of odd job or I worked as a moving company. I did all kinds of odd jobs. So I've worked for it, but that gave me appreciation for how hard it is
Right.
to make a living and
That's
what
true.
working people go through every day.
So let's compare and contrast you to Lois Frankel, who would be your opponent again.
Well, Lois Frankel, we could talk for hours about how bad a job she's done of representing our district here. My goal is to represent our district and pursue all those things I talked about
Yes.
earlier in my AAA platform. With Lois, she says one thing here and she does something else in Washington. She says she supports women.
Right.
No, she doesn't. She voted for keeping men in women's sports and in their locker rooms and in their bathrooms. She says she supports seniors. No, she doesn't. She voted to tax Social Security.
Right.
She says she supports working people. Nope. She's voted to tax tips and overtime work. She says she supports Israel. I don't know. I mean, for a very long time, she was part of the Progressive Caucus,
Right.
which is about as anti-Semitic
Right.
as you get. And it wasn't until a lot of people, including me, called her out on that she finally left. But also, she was a no-show on a day when virtually every
Right.
member of Congress voted in favor and in support of the Abraham Accords. Interesting thing about Lois Frankel, I always used to say, if you vote for her, you're really putting Nancy Pelosi in our seat. That's
Right.
what really
Right.
represents
Right.
us. Nancy Pelosi doesn't call the shots there anymore.
Right.
But I'll tell you who does now. I remember a few years ago, I saw an interview of Lois Frankel where she speaks very fondly of the squad. She kind of fancies herself as kind of like a godmother to them. Well, that relationship has now gone the other way around. They're calling the shots. And I'll tell
Right.
you, if you re-elect Lois Frankel as your member of Congress, I'll tell you who you're really getting representing you. It's AOC and the squad. Do you want that?
Well, is she even showing up? I never see her on the news. I never hear about her. I mean, my understanding is she's in her late 70s. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think she's 77.
Right, and she has some issues.
So she has a voting record that's well below average in Congress.
Right.
I think that's the best way to put it. She does show up. I mean, she showed up for the State of the Union address. I don't know if you saw at one point she stood up and started heckling the president. And she most certainly was not one of the people who stood up to say that she supports Americans over illegal aliens. And so she's doing a terrible job for us. It's time for her to go. She is not representing this district, Mike.
No. Matter of fact, now there's so many people moving out of New York to come here. Does that help Florida? Or are they going to come and vote as Democrats, or are they going to come and say, I want to keep it Republican because we like it the way it is?
It's actually worked out okay for us. I mean, there's great fear from everyone that Democrats will come from northern states like New York and Connecticut and New Jersey, come down here and vote for all the same things that are destroying those states. And certainly a lot of those people are coming down here, but I can tell you overwhelmingly it's more conservatives than Republicans that are coming down. And to get back to something you mentioned earlier about the district, it was a Democrat plus 9% district when I ran in 2024. Because of more Republicans moving in, it's now D plus 5.8. So in just a year and a quarter, we've actually come in by more than 3%. So just organically, the district has become a more competitive seat for a Republican to run in.
And how about redistricting? I've heard about it, but I'm not sure they're going to do it. Will it happen by 2026? Will it possibly be an R district?
So Governor DeSantis and the legislature seems very intent on doing it. You know, there's a special session scheduled for next week. They might actually postpone it by a couple of days, but they're quite serious about it. And my expectation is that they will create more Republican seats, including this one. And so that'll be very exciting to run in an R plus seat.
Yeah, that would really help you.
Yes.
Yeah. And is that why there's more people kind of pouring into the race as a result of?
That could be part of it. I mean, it is the district where President Trump lives, so that's true. That will always attract people to run in it. And you know, my focus is going out there and talking to voters and staying engaged with them. You know, I have the real advantage of having run a couple of times, and so I personally have knocked on over 10,000 doors in the district, and I've become very well known in the Republican community. And I'm out there engaging with voters, and you know, a day doesn't go by when I don't run into someone who, oh, I saw you speak at this event, or you knocked on my door. And I want to keep that up because that personal engagement with the voters helps me understand what's going on in the district, but also sends a message to them that I'm serious about what I'm doing and I'm going to do a good job of representing them.
So let me ask you a question. You won the primary twice. This is your third time running.
That's right.
Okay. Now, why is the third time a charm? I mean,
well, that's what everyone keeps saying. Third time's a charm, Dan.
Right.
And I certainly hope they're right. I mean, there's plenty of precedent for that. I mean, there are, like Newt Gingrich is one that comes to mind as someone who didn't win until his third time. So just to go through the numbers, I got to 45% last time in a deep blue district. That by itself is a good accomplishment.
It is,
But then when you compare it to how President Trump and Rick Scott did, they were only around 46%. So I was actually pretty close to them. That's important because down-ticket candidates typically underperform the top of the ballot. And there are plenty of candidates in other parts of the country that were 5 and 10 points behind President Trump. But relative to President Trump, my performance, let me tell you some famous names I outperformed, where I did better than they did relative to the president. Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Carrie Lake. These are people I outperformed. And this is why Republican leaders have taken notice and told me, don't be discouraged about having run twice. You actually proved you're a good campaigner. You now have great knowledge of the district. You're fully vetted. You have a great team in place. And you've got the tremendous, millions of dollars of name recognition built in without having to spend a penny. And that's why I'm getting a lot of encouragement to run again. And that's why I feel this is the year I'm going to win, especially with these better district lines we expect to have.
No, and do you think you'll be able to get some of your opponents to really get behind you and back you? Because that could make a difference. I mean, a lot of times, like I ran in a very contentious primary with Laura Loomer and a couple others, and most of us all got along really well, except for Laura. She was the only outlier who just, and that was problematic because we didn't support her because the way she ran her and conducted her campaign. And I'm hoping that people would see that you could actually pull this off and get behind you and support you, so that you get what it takes to get you over that finish line.
Well, I'll have a better chance of winning if that happens, Mike.
Right.
Maybe you can be an emissary to help make
Yes,
that happen.
I will try.
And you know, I always run a big tent kind of approach to everything. And you know, certainly for those who want to back me, when I win the primary, you know, I'm more than happy to give them a role in that campaign.
Right.
And so it can be a real team victory.
Well,
I'm all in favor of that.
You know, that's the other thing too that people don't understand. You got to spend so much money in the primary just to get to the general. And then by the time you get to the general, you have such a short time. And you need so much more money to overcome. I mean, Lois is probably not going to have a primary.
A couple thoughts there. First of all, yes, our primary date is not until August 18th.
Right.
I don't know who the heck set that up that way in Florida.
Right, exactly.
It heavily favors incumbents.
It does.
Because what happened last time was I did have a very contentious primary.
Right.
I ultimately prevailed, even though the guy outspent me 4-1 on TV and radio.
Right.
But we used up our resources, so the campaign had to then on August 24th start over from scratch, fundraising, new message, and so on. It's very hard to do that in a 10-week period.
Right, exactly. That's my point.
Lois Frankel does have at least one primary competitor already.
Okay.
And my wife and I actually met her about a month ago. And a couple of thoughts about her. We saw her speak at an event. So she walked in there wearing one of those ISIS Gestapo hats. And exactly. And then whenever I talk about Lois Frankel, I talk about how she's too liberal. Well, guess what this person said?
All the way.
She's not liberal enough.
Right, exactly.
So,
exactly.
So other than that, we liked her. I mean, other than that, we liked her. There's the joke.
Right.
But that's who's challenging her. And I'd like to run against Lois Frankel because she's very beatable based on a horrific track record of representing the district. But this other person would be even easier to beat because, I mean, she's way off to the left end.
And that's something I think we're starting to see. We're starting to see some real radical, crazy candidates. I mean, look at the mayor of New York City.
Unbelievable.
Remember, we'd never forget 9/11? What happened and we never forget?
No, I'm shocked. It's horrible what's going on there. And a funny thing is, people were saying all along, "Oh, he's just saying that stuff to get elected." Well, he's been even worse than what he said when he was campaigning.
I mean, the Muslim call to prayer, the grocery stores. They're starting, I guess, one in every city. I guess he's going for.
Yeah, there'll be. I guarantee you, there will be debacles.
Yeah, of course they will. I mean, he says he can't fulfill his promise on the free buses or the free child care yet, but their tax base is getting destroyed, just like California's.
That's right.
Because why would you stay and get taxed? Governor Hochul asked people to come back after she told them to flee New York 2 years ago in 22.
She said, if you don't like it, you get on the bus and go to Florida. She said, she literally said something like that, which I can't believe a governor would ever say that. And now they did it. Now, oops! Look at the damage.
Exactly. Well, Dan, we got a minute left. I think you're the guy.
Well, thank you.
Wrap
Mike.
up. Tell the audience why they need to vote for you, not only in the primary but in the general.
Okay, very good. So as I said, I will bring a businessman's perspective to Washington. If there's only one thing you remember, I hope it'll be that. I'm running on that AAA platform I talked about of making things more affordable, holding our government and leaders accountable, and very importantly, America first. Every one of my decisions is going to be based on doing what's best for this country. That's what you can count on. And yes, I do support President Trump. I make no bones about it. And I'm looking forward to working with him and finishing the job of making America great again.
Now, go to danforusa.com, danforusa.com, and you could support Dan Franzese for Congress. I think he'll do an excellent job, and I have supported him for years, and I think he's the guy. Thank you for watching the Political Power Hour with your host, Mike Vilardi.
Thank you for watching the Political Power Hour with your host, Michael Vilardi. If you would like to see a particular candidate on our show, please email us at michaelvilardi@gmail.com. That's one L in Vilardi. We will see you next week.